Welcome to Life Empowers with Melissa Oden. Where there is life, there is hope. Where there is life, there's a place for love to grow, and love emboldens and strengthens. Where there is life, there's an opportunity to grow and be empowered. I'm living testament to that, and you are too. And if you don't yet feel like your life is testament to this, don't despair and don't stop listening to this podcast. This is exactly why I'm doing it. Thanks for joining me this week as we delve into so many life-affirming topics. As promised, I am finally bringing interviews with survivors to this podcast. You do not want to miss this week where I interview my friend, Dawn Milberger, who survived at-home attempts, and I say at-home attempts because there was more than one, to end her life by her biological parents. This is not an easy story to hear, of course, as really no survivor story is easy to hear, but I think it's an important one to hear Dawn's story and to hear, of course, how she has persevered in the face of her own suffering. And she's suffered through many things in her life, like all of us. So don't miss this conversation between Dawn and I about her experience and what it's like to love and forgive even in the face of such difficulty. The first survivor that I'm having on the Life Empowers podcast. And honestly, I can't think of any other person to kick it off with other than Dawn. So Dawn, thank you for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me, girl. I appreciate the time and the opportunity.
You will probably remember better than I can because, you know, I'm just having one of those weeks where my brain is all over the place. But when did you and I first connect?
Oh, gosh. Probably, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago. I think it was 8 years ago. You were speaking at a pregnancy care center in Round Rock, Texas. And Sonny and I drove up to meet you and to love on you and support you and your mama and sweet Ava girl. And so that was our first meeting, and it was glorious.
It was, but I think you and I had contact even before that.
Yeah, we've been in touch and in contact probably, I don't know, maybe 6 months to a year before that. Mm-hmm. But our first initial in-person meeting was at that pregnancy care center. But yeah, we'd been in contact when I first realized that an abortion survivor was actually a thing. And I reached out to you, and it is a thing, and it was a thing, and it was Katie barred the door after that. It was like, oh my gosh, this is wonderful to know that I'm not alone.
And I think that's important, right? I mean, I think people would notice there's this experience that all of us have of that first moment where you go, this is a thing. I mean, it's really a thing, not just my thing. It's a thing for other people. And then you kind of navigate, you know, how do I reach out to this other person who knows what it's like to be me? Do I reach out to them? When do I reach out to them? So yeah, I love that we all kind of have those moments, but, you know, take us back because other people don't have the blessing to know you the way that I do.
Oh,
well, and I mean that.
Thanks, girl. Love you, girl.
You're one of my ride or dies. You know that? Maybe I've never told you that.
No, that's good to know.
Yeah, you're one of my ride or dies, and we're riding, right?
We're riding, girl. We're riding.
But take us back, like, you know, for people who don't know your story, who are you, right? What's your story? How did you get to that point where you were needing to find out that there were abortion survivors?
Well, you know, and one thing I want to point out is there are abortion attempt survivors and then there's abortion attempt survivors. I didn't think I fit into y'all's genre because y'all are the younger generation whose abortion attempts took place in a clinic, in a medical setting, because mine was self-induced by my birth mother and birth father. So I didn't think I actually fit. So I was close, but it wasn't through an abortionist. It was just by the hands of two people whose perception of me at this time in their life tried to take my life. So my abortion survival happened back in the 60s. I'm letting you know my age, when it was still illegal to kill me. And when my birth mother, excuse me, when she found my birth father, they met at a party, and he was married with a family. They got together, they had an affair, and then that's when the good Lord decided to send me down here to grow a vessel to walk out my purpose through these two people. They didn't want any part of it. And I'm going back on just their confession of what they told me. Now, they were, my birth mother was very sheltered with her in her life, and so she didn't have, what can I say, she wasn't as streetwise, and I guess that's a good thing for me. But she confessed to me that she and my birth father did everything shy of a coat hanger that they knew to do without her getting hurt to make me go away, because their perception of me at the time represented and was proof of their decisions in secret. I represented shame. I represented judgment. I was proof of infidelity. That was their perception of me at the time. They didn't consider me a human with a purpose, with a life plan. They in the midst of their journey, that's how they perceived me. So when I met my birth parents in 1986, February 1986, at this hotel in Jersey Village, Texas, my mom and I went to see them. And one of the first things my birth mother said to me was, I need to ask for your forgiveness because I tried to get rid of you. And then she said, I tried to get rid of you twice, in one way by having a friend who was a nurse, and she would come over in the evenings and give me injections. I knew that the nurse came over twice, but I don't know the amount of injection. I don't know what she injected into my birth mother. My birth mother never did tell me. And so I'm sitting here looking at my birth parents going, okay, this is the most awkward conversation I have ever been involved in. What in the world do I do with this? So she continues to tell me everything that she did. She said I couldn't go to my family because my father was the local music director of our local Baptist church, and because my family and my church were the same thing, so I couldn't go to either of them, and that made me angry. That really broke my heart for her, that she didn't feel like she had anybody to go to. So anyway, she proceeded to tell me that she said I didn't want to be pregnant, I didn't have anybody to go to, I didn't want to bring shame, and she said I tried to smoke you out, I tried to starve you out. She said, I squeezed you into my same pair of jeans the whole time I was pregnant. She goes, I just didn't want to be pregnant. I was more concerned about cigarettes than I was about food. Well, then my birth father in the same meeting said, well, I guess I need to ask for your forgiveness too, because I used your birth mother's stomach as a punching bag to make you go away. And his terminology just stuck out to me. Make me go away. It's like, how do you wrap your mind around that? Well, he continued to confess that, you see, I was married with a family, and they had no idea. My wife had no idea at the time that I had met your birth mother, and that we, had this happen. Well, he's confessing all this to me. He said, I used to give her rough piggyback rides. He said, I pressed, pushed, jostled, and gave her the rough piggyback rides, make her jump down the stairs to make you go away. And it just made me go numb, because what do you do with that? Because at that time, I knew I was adopted. I knew had been adopted my entire life. It was open and loving conversation about being adopted. Never in my wildest dreams or my parents did we ever expect to hear this. So I'm expecting to talk about the adoption. And when my birth mother said, I need to ask for your forgiveness, I thought she was going to say about the relinquishment, which there was nothing negative about that. I never held it against her. I had a wonderful childhood. I had a wonderful life, and adoption is my reality. And it's just because it's different doesn't make it bad. And when I was told these things, it was like, what do you do with this? I mean, it's like, okay, is this a thing? And so I'm sitting there staring at my birth mother, and I catch my mom. She's standing behind my birth mother. She's sitting, leaning up against the dresser in the hotel room. And my mom was just kind of shaking her head like, things are making sense because of the medical issues I was born with. And my birth mother confessed that when her water broke and she went to the hospital to give birth, that I was born early and convulsing, and the doctors were trying to figure out what was going on. And my birth mother confessed that she didn't say anything for fear of legal ramifications. So I was only an orphan for a month. My mom said I wasn't placed for adoption because they didn't know if I was going to live or not. She said, you were born sick, you were born early, but we didn't know why. And so now we know why. So when I looked over my birth mother's shoulder and I saw my mom's head just kind of shaking like confirmation, it was all making sense to her. So in this hotel room, in this pivotal moment in my life, I'm just so grateful for my parents and their wisdom, because we go out to dinner with my birth parents, extremely awkward. We go home, and I'm sitting at the breakfast table with my mom, and I'm going, what just happened here? What is she talking about? So my mom started to share with me, this is what she's talking about. This is what happened, but, now it's legal to do this. And she just went into, sharing with me this, but this was pre-Roe v. Wade. And I started to get very angry. How could they do that to me? How could they do this? How could they do this? And I was on the path to a very unrighteous anger. And my mom stuck up her finger and she said, stop right there. I love you too much to let you go down this path. She said, this is shocking. And she said, but there's some things I need you to come back to me. I think some things I need you to, kind of get a grip on, kid. She said, what they did to you hurts me as well, because you're my kid, you're my child. And this hurts me as well. She said, but there's some things I want you to notice. She said, one, they didn't have to tell you. And because she said they didn't have to tell you because they've risked emotional and physical rejection from you by telling you this. And the other ones, the two more things she said, the third one, she said, this has already happened. You have already survived this, and you're doing just fine. God just decided to let you in on it right now. This has always been your reality, whether you knew it or not. And the last thing she said was, and this one got me, this is what made me even more angry. She said, And when your mother tells you these things and you're 18 years old, you're going, whose side are you on? It's like, wait a second, you need to be just as on the path, the type of anger that I'm on. And then she said, Mama heard what they did to you. But you know what else Mama heard? And that was two people looking for mercy. And I would be very careful about how you respond to this, because what do you look for every day? And I'm like, oh, I hate it when you're right. But I knew in my heart she was correct. That at the time of my conception, their perception of me is different now than what it was then. And they were convicted and they were looking for mercy. So that was the path that started the whole, is this a thing? How do you deal with this? What do you do when you find out, when you're at your most vulnerable in your existence and somebody tries to take your life who's been called to nurture you for 9 months to get you here? And I didn't know it was a thing. I didn't know that there were others that, whose lives were attacked in the womb and they survived. I had no idea. But I had been talking about adoption for years. Adoption for years. And right now I've been talking about adoption and the beauty of it, for over 35 years. But I never had a piece talking about the abortion survive of it because, one, I didn't know it was a thing, and two, I didn't want it to be a trigger to the people in the audience who had been involved in an abortion, because that's a very serious trigger, very serious issues. And so I guess it was out of spirit of love and sensitivity that I didn't bring it up. But it also seems, what I had some people tell me, that just seems so, quote unquote, far-fetched. People don't survive that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, it was an attempt. If it was successful, then no, I wouldn't be here. But it was an attempt. Months and months and months on end that didn't take place in a clinic. It didn't take place by a doctor. It was just two people who did everything they knew to do shy of a coat hanger. That's what I was told. Take it or leave it. This is my reality. This is my world. This is my life. This is my testimony. So, when I found out it was a thing, it was like, you know what? I saw your picture. I'm like, I need to call this beauty and I need to let her know that there's some old gals like us who survived pre-Roe v. Wade.
And now I'm approaching the time in my life where I always tell people, right, I am one of the older ones. So I'm hot on your trail. What can I say?
Come on, girl, let's go.
Well, and I, as much as you and I, love to laugh and see the beauty in life and talk about all matters of faith, I think there's so much wisdom in what you learned that day, in the words that your mom spoke to you about the way you chose to walk this out. And so I just want to make sure people caught that. I still, even though I've heard you share your story so many times, I'm always struck by a couple of the pieces that you talk about. And I think other people could really relate to this when you say, I was shame, right? Yeah. You were this outward expression of shame over the choices that your biological parents made. And I think whether someone was conceived before Roe versus Wade, like you, or after, like me, the reality is, I think probably more people than not are somehow conceived under circumstances that feel shameful.
Sure.
And then the great question is, right, what do people do in the midst of that shame? Do they make every good choice Are they supported through a pregnancy center or family members or friends? Are they somehow convinced by our society that abortion is the best option, the simple solution to this shame that they're feeling, And I don't think it's any coincidence that I opened my email this morning and seriously couldn't even focus my eyes. I'll be really honest. That's how I was laying there with Ava laying on top of me, right? Going, okay, I'm not going to move, but I'm going to read my email. And here I am trying to focus my eyes this morning to an email from someone's husband, actually. And hopefully I'll share this story at some point, but his wife is now deceased, and he wanted to honor her by sharing her story. And her story was really a lot like yours. He told her story of being conceived before Roe versus Wade, and her mom, and I say mom because she wasn't placed for adoption, so mom raised her, but mom tried 3 different ways to end her life at home.
Wow.
And covered it up, right? When she went into early labor, didn't tell anybody what had happened, and simply said, right, I didn't realize that I was pregnant, even though she had had other children, right? And I know the doctors were scratching their heads from what I can tell. But she was born with a number of health issues that nobody really talked about, but everybody whispered about, trying to piece it together. And, I was just reading that email thinking, so I wonder how many more stories are out there.
Right. Wow.
And it's tough, right? I mean, you and I have had some interesting conversations over the years of, how do we honor your experience in the midst of a culture war where we are battling against legalized abortion, right? How do we balance out how we are called to advocate for legislative change, but at the same time, honor stories and experiences like yours? Because I think in reality, we know that there is a much greater likelihood that there are more stories like yours than there are mine, simply because the abortion industry and the medical professionals are able to carry out the execution, and every pun intended for that word, they're able to carry out the execution of abortion. Don't miss Dawn's response to that question and the rest of our conversation in the next podcast episode. Thanks for joining me this week on Life Empowers. I hope you found our time together to be life-affirming, hope-building, encouraging, informative. And remember, the next time someone states that abortion is empowering, you know better. Life empowers. See you again next week.